Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of this virtual meeting of South Kesteven District Council Planning Committee. It will be a fairly lengthy meeting, so I'm looking forward to the fullest cooperation of members and the public in ensuring we proceed in an orderly and professional manner. Can I welcome members of the press and members of the public who have joined this meeting? And if there are any Irish people among you, can I wish you a very happy St. Patrick's Day, and I hope you enjoy your celebrations. So moving on, dealing with the housekeeping matters, could I ask that all devices not being used be either turned off or put on silent? Members of the committee and of the public may find it helpful to have devices connected to their main electricity supply. It would be helpful if landlines are situated so if they do ring, they are muted and that other household distractions are kept to a minimum. Just a reminder to members of the committee who have control of their own microphones, please remember to turn them on when you start speaking and turn them off when you finish. Shelley has control of the mechanism for turning off the microphones for public speakers. And members of the public have their camera turned on when they are speaking, please. Speakers will be advised when they have 30 seconds left to speak and then when their time is up. A reminder that the chat function in Skype for Business is for the use of planning committee members only who wish to indicate they would like to speak. Members of the public or other members should not use the chat function. If they do, they will be asked once to stop. If they continue to use it, they will be removed from the meeting. If you disconnect yourself, there is IT support during the whole of the meeting, should it be needed. And if a member gets disconnected for a short period, I'll refer them to 16.2 of the published protocol, adjournment of a meeting. We will adjourn the meeting to enable that member to rejoin, but if after a length of time that's not possible, we would have to continue the meeting and they would be excluded for that small period of time. And if they miss part of a discussion or debate, they would not be able to take part in any vote. So we have got in the chamber here, I've got Councillor Reid with me, and if I find my notes very quickly, Shelley Thurkill is dealing with the microphone and keeping me under control and in order. Naomi is here. She will be dealing with the roll call and the recording of any votes. So I think that deals with all the opening remarks. So if we can move on to sorry, just for the record, the procedure is that for speakers they have 3 minutes to speak. We've already said they'll get the 30 seconds and so on. The order of speakers, if there is a district councillor present and wishes to speak, they come first. Then we move on to parish and town councillors, objectors to an application, a maximum of 2 people, a supporter of an application, 1 person only, and then we move on to the applicant or agent to speak, and then we go on to questions to the case officer and move on to debate. Right, I think I have dealt with all the preliminaries. Yeah, I have. So can we go on to register of attendance, please, Naomi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, if members could just indicate whether they're present when I call out your name, please. Councillor David Bellamy.
Present.
Councillor Harris Bisnath Singh.
Present.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
Present.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
Present.
Councillor Mike Exton.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Rosemary Cabery Brown.
Present, but I'm trying to get hold of IT. I don't appear to be in properly.
Okay, we can hear you, Rosemary.
It does appear that you're in the meeting, okay, Councillor Cabery Brown. The only thing we can't see at the minute is we can't see your video.
No, well, it says House Scrutiny Committee, and it's got all the other parts on it, so if you try to put anything up that I'm supposed to be looking at, I shan't see it.
Has somebody got music playing in the background, please?
It's me trying to get hold of the IT department.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'll ask if somebody in IT can give you a ring, Councillor Caberry-Brown.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Councillor Penny Milnes.
Present.
Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Present.
Councillor Robert Reid.
Present.
Councillor Ian Selby.
Present. Good morning, all.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
Present.
Councillor Judy Smith.
Present.
And Councillor Bob Adams.
Present.
So that's all members of the committee present, Chairman.
Thank you, Naomi. Move on to item 2, disclosure of interests. Any members got any disclosures of interest other than those recorded in the Book of Declarations? Well, if somebody's still got music playing in the background, please. If any member does realise during the meeting that they should have declared an interest, you can do that at any time at all. Minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of March have been circulated. There was, after the first circulation, there was an amendment, a very small error. One of the reasons, one of the planning reasons, was not recorded in one of the applications correctly. That was amended, and amended minutes were sent out to every member of the planning committee. Could I ask, have members been able to see those minutes and read them? That is the amended version, the later version. I'll take that as a yes.
I think, Bob, they only came out electronically, the amended version.
No, they came out by post. There was a hard copy sent to everybody.
I got the minutes, not the amended version.
Okay, in that case, then we'll take a proposal to amend the minutes. David, if you would.
I propose an amendment to the minutes then, and to S20/1820. I propose that DE1 is put in as a reason for refusal.
Thank you, David. Could I have that seconded, please?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we've had the amended minutes proposed and seconded, and the amendment stated. Can we take a vote on that, please? Naomi, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Councillor David Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Harish Bisnath Singh.
For.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Rosemary Caberry-Brown.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Penny Milnes.
For.
Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Abstain.
Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Ian Selby.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Jackie Smith.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Judy Smith.
For.
And Councillor Bob Adams.
For.
Thank you. So the minutes are approved, including the amendment.
Thank you, Naomi. Before I go on to going through the applications, public speakers, etc., for the record, item number 6, which is the S202056, has been withdrawn, and that is pending reports regarding habitat regulations assessment and viability assessment, which were not received in time for this meeting. So that application will come back at a later stage. Going through the applications and speakers, agenda items 4 and 5 are part heard, so there are no speakers on those. Just a reminder for Councillor Morgan, not being present when they were first heard, she will not be able to take a vote or take part in the debate or vote. And Councillor Caberry-Brown, you were only, for item 4 of the meeting, you were only partly there, and so you will not be able to take part further in any further debate or vote. Speakers, there are no speakers on those 4 and 5. Agenda item 6 withdrawn. Agenda item 7, which was S201169, outline application at Ancaster. We have just one speaker there, and that is the ward councillor, Councillor Ian Stokes. Agenda item 8, which is the Harvey Close and West of Canton Waybourne, S210113. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 speakers here. We have 2 speakers speaking against the application. And I hope I get your name right, sir. Steve Giuliari. I hope I pronounced that right for you, sir. Lucas Fiddler. For the application, John O'Bruff. And then we have the applicant's agent, David Fletcher. And for item 9, which is the S210062, the poultry farm at Fullbeck, we have only 1 speaker there, which is Rosie Siddons, and she will be speaking against the application. So if I can now move on to considering the applications, I think I've done with all the housekeeping stuff. So we go on to item 4, the first part heard one, S200669, in the capable hands of Phil Jordan, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. I'll just upload the presentation. Just confirm, Chairman, when that's appeared on your screen.
Yes, it's on the screen, Phil, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this first application is S200669. It's a part heard application. The application proposes a mobile home and a touring caravan for a traveller that works in forestry. So this, just to remind members, this application has been considered as an application for accommodation for a gypsy and traveller. The application site is sited at land north of Bennington Bait off Valley Lane, adjacent to Long Bennington. I've already been introduced, but I'm Phil Jordan, Principal Planning Officer at South Kesteven. So a bit of background, members will recall that the application was recommended for approval at the 17th of February Planning Committee. Members discussed the application and voted that they were minded to refuse the application contrary to officer recommendation. As per the Constitution, members have subsequently submitted their reasons for refusal, and these have been considered in a report by the interim head of planning. So just a reminder about the site itself. You can see on this slide a bit of an overview. You can see the A1 running through the centre of the screen, Long Bennington to the east of the site, and the red circle sort of broadly outlining the location of the proposed application. Looking a bit closer, you can see the sites adjacent to the slip road on and off the A1, and you can see the Bennington Bait, that's the sort of maggot farm to the south of the site, and Valley Road that runs to the north of the site. So this is the application site, the red line just outlining the extent of the site, and in the sort of northwest of the site there, you can see where the pitch would be, or is proposed to be located, comprising of the caravan and mobile home. So just a few photos. This is looking west, so just sort of where my cursor is, that's where the access into the site is. This is looking away from the direction of the A1. So this is sort of looking along the slip road that goes on and off the A1, and you can see this close boarded fencing that's been erected along the site boundary. There's some more fencing that's already been put in around the site access, just as a reminder to members that the site has already been occupied, and this fencing has been put up since the site's been occupied. So you can see just from the photos here, these are the caravans that are currently on the site, and the portaloo. So this is the western boundary of the site. This fence has now been completed on the inside of that hedgerow. And then this is the view along Valley Lane. So you can see, so this is looking back towards Long Bennington. You can see the road sort of rises up here. That's where it crosses the A1. You should just be able to see where my cursor is, the traffic along the A1, and some of these commercial buildings that are to the north of the village. So the consideration of these reasons for refusal is in the report that's been circulated. I tried to summarise them into bullet points. The first being the policy requirement criteria A of the Gypsy and Traveller policy, which is, does the site provide an acceptable living environment for its residents? In that relation, there's I'll sort of come on to the suggested reason for refusal, which includes a lack of information, and essentially members will remember that there was some debate last time about a previous application that had been refused on the site, where there was a lack of information around noise impact, primarily related to the A1, and then potential odour impacts from the maggot farm, which are adjacent to the site. Those reports haven't been sort of submitted, and so there is that insufficiency reason there. In terms of air quality, that this was raised by members in debate and in the submitted reasons for refusal. This wasn't raised as a concern by environmental protection, and I think members will recall several applications we've had on allocated sites close to the A1 where we have looked in some detail at the air quality, and it wasn't found to be an issue. The personal circumstance of the applicant, that's not a policy consideration, but it's a material consideration, and that really sort of falls into the wider balancing of the application. The location of the site has been discussed, and whilst in normal circumstances the presumption in most cases is to resist development that's outside of existing settlements, policy H5 just the requirement there is that sites are within reasonable proximity of services and facilities, and in this case, with the site being 400 metres from Long Bennington, which is a larger village, it's considered that it is within that reasonable sort of distance to access those services. The commercial use of the site, this largely doesn't form part of the application, but it was mentioned within some of the submitted documents, and to some extent can be controlled by condition and limits and restrictions put on that, but would be something that would form part of the sort of the wider consideration of the potentially the visual impact of the site. In terms of ecology and foul drainage, foul drainage isn't considered to be a reason that we could pursue through an appeal, given the site characteristics and the size of the site. It's a reasonable or an appropriately worded condition could cover and secure a foul drainage strategy for the site. Likewise, in terms of ecology, an ecology report was submitted, and a condition could be included that secures some of the recommendations from that report. Probably the one which doesn't form part of the suggested reason for refusal, that is open to a degree of judgment and has been raised since the report was published, is the visual impact of the proposed development. Clearly that requires a degree of judgment, and some of the reasons why that's not considered to be a reason that would succeed through an appeal are within the main report. The that's largely down to the surrounding context, which includes that maggot farm, the A1, some of the commercial buildings off the A1, the pylons which are in the vicinity of the site. However, clearly there is a visual impact associated with the proposed development in terms of that close bordered fencing, the part of the hedgerow that's been removed, the caravans and associated commercial development. So whilst that hasn't been highlighted as a reason that that the interim head of planning considers could be defended and would succeed at appeal, that element is open to a degree of judgment. I think the consideration of the temporary consent, again, that really just forms part of the wider consideration around options for making a recommendation and making a decision on the scheme. So the reason that's highlighted in the report as being the defensible reason for refusal is largely along, or picks up on, two of the reasons that were previously cited when this a previous application came forward on the site, which wasn't at that time considered as a traveller pitch, and that picks up on the insufficient information around noise impact and odour impact, which doesn't allow full consideration of the potential impacts on living conditions for the proposed accommodation, which therefore conflicts with policy H5 criteria A. And then the second part of that reason is just to sort of confirm that other material considerations, including the personal circumstances and the need for traveller pitches, don't outweigh that policy conflict. Thank you, Chairman, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Phil. Are you leaving the presentation up, Phil? No, you're not. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can go back to any slides, but once I've got it uploaded, it does can be loaded back on quite quickly. So if there is anything anyone needs to refer to, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Phil. Members of committee, any questions to Phil Jordan, please? Shelley, will you call them in as they put their names in the chat box, please?
Councillor Penny Mills.
Thank you. Penny?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if I should ask Phil this question or wait for debate, but I would like to challenge the visual impact on one or two of our spatial policies. And I know it is a matter of judgment, Phil, but there's quite a lot in the planning guidance for travellers and our local plan, which of course has been accepted or come into force since the previous refusal, which didn't include these things. But shall I discuss it in debate first?
Yeah, I think Phil's done a very comprehensive response to the questions I know have been asked following the publication of the agenda. So yeah, let's deal with them in debate, Penny. Okay.
Okay.
I can't see any more questions for the case officer, Mr. Chairman. There are only requests to speak in debate.
We'll move on to thank you, Shelley. We'll move on to debate. First contributor, please, Shelley.
Councillor Robert Reid.
Councillor Reid. Robert, please.
Chairman, can I just suggest that Penny follows on in debate, and I'd like to speak after that? Is that all right?
Absolutely fine.
Thank you, because I mean it was sort of a follow-on. Thank you.
Yeah. Penny. Councillor Milnes. Penny, please.
Okay. I'd just like to debate a bit further the other policies around this application and the principle of development on the site. I know we've had some answers, but when you look at the planning guidance for travellers, paragraph 26, this isn't previously developed land. It's agricultural. It's a gateway site in open countryside. So you going back to the planning guidance for travellers, sorry, I'm looking at paragraphs 26 and 24. we've got SP5, you know, essential need in the countryside. And on the visuals, you know, you can see the caravans. You can see them over the fence. You can see them through the hedgerows. And the other thing I'd like to discuss, and I don't know if this comes under DE1, these are all reasons I put in originally, but fencing itself is out of character, and also in the guidance for traveller sites, we're not supposed to be fencing in travellers. They are meant to be enhancing the environment and the landscape and increasing openness. So I don't understand why that isn't considered out of character. If the fence is 2 metres high, I think I'm right in saying permitted development is 1.8 metres high, but it's still out of character. And, you know, DE1, we asked for a high level of design, and there are criteria around design of pitches for gypsies and travellers. They are meant to be of a high quality, and I don't think that this submission has produced that at all. There's layout and lighting and all sorts of, you've got to, you know, have a good level of quality of life on the site. And also with visuals and caravan sites, there's lots of paraphernalia, A, from the commercial and B, from the domestic occupation of the site. So I do think it does have a visual impact, and I would be interested in trying to include that into a reason for refusal based on the local plan and the planning guidance for travellers. Because, you know, it is the other side of the A1 from Long Bennington. It is in open countryside. The grain thing up the road, that is agricultural, and I assume the maggot farm is also agricultural. So there's no essential need for this to be in the open countryside. And also, would we allow any caravan site to be there for anybody who's not a traveller? And I think that's a critical material consideration as well. So I throw that out because I'm a little worried that we need to add that onto our reasons for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Phil, there was a lot there. Do you want to respond at this stage or come back later?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll potentially come back later, and you know, it might be appropriate for Jeff to give some sort of concluding comments. You know, in terms of the process, it should be it's a consideration from the head of planning on the defensibility of the reasons for refusal. I think I would just sort of highlight at this stage I think certainly the spatial characteristics of the site are difficult on the basis of the wording of policy H5, which is explicit in terms of its you know, reasonable access to shops and services, as opposed to the wording of SP5. But the sort of the visual impact argument and design, that those are really open to a degree of judgment, and I think it's probably at this stage appropriate to let the debate continue and then perhaps ask Jeff Upton for comment towards the end.
Thank you, Phil. Shelley, is Councillor Reid Robert still the next speaker?
He certainly is, Chairman.
Councillor Reid Robert, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, firstly, I'd like to uphold the reasons for refusal. I think this is a perfect example of where other committee members, along with myself, have worked really, really hard at drilling down and absolutely substantiating a weighted reason for refusal. I think that you could take a further consideration with respect to DE1, but I'm beginning to think, for reasons of clarity, it might well be best to stay with what we have, and I am happy to take a view from Jeff Upton on what Penny, my colleague, Councillor Milner, said, and on to see whether we would include that or not, and propose that refusal is upheld. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Robert. I'll call Jeff. I think Phil Dilks has indicated. Shelley?
Yes, we've got Councillor Phil Dilts, yes.
Councillor Dilks. Phil, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say I'm conflicted on this one. I do want to thank Councillor Reid, Councillor Mills and Harris, and I think there was another councillor that put in all the reasons for refusal, and I do listen to those, and I thank the head of planning for responding to them. I am a bit concerned on that the main reason seems to be noise from the A1, yes, and the odour from the maggot farm. But the noise from the A1, I think we need to be consistent, and I do remember relatively recently we passed, as I recall, quite a large housing development literally at the side of the A1 in Colsterworth. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but you know, I can't see that the noise on a slip road would be any less than it would be on at Colsterworth. I'm not quite sure what we're saying about the personal circumstances of the individual and how much of a material consideration it is, but I'm slightly worried about the schooling aspect that has been raised, saying that, you know, the child or children will be going to school in Newark. I've got to say I welcome the children of Gypsy and Travellers going to any school, and you know, Gypsy and Traveller children have a very low, generally speaking, you know, a low educational attainment because some don't go to school that often. So I do welcome them. They're going to any school. And my final point would be, and I apologise, perhaps I should have asked the question of Phil, but in the paperwork, and this is going the other way, if I can say, it is mentioned, I'm not sure if it was in additional information or in this paperwork, forgive me, but there was mention that there are sites, whilst we might not have sites allocated in South Kesterton, this site is on the boundary, of course, of Newark and Sherwood, or close to it, and it was mentioned that there are appropriate sites for Gypsy and Travellers in Newark itself. Could you just clarify that, please, if possible? As I say, I am conflicted, and I'm still not sure which. I abstained in the first vote. I'm not sure which way to go yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Phil Jordan, are you able to answer that query about the provision in Newark and Sherwood?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the full details of what their which sites they've got allocated. I do know they're in a similar position in terms of if they have got allocations, that they've got more need than they've got allocated. But I think perhaps the point Councillor Dilks is referring to is that the current occupier of this site and the applicant was previously resident on a site in Newark, which is an authorised Gypsy site at Tolney Lane, and he's understood to have previously resided at that site before moving on to this piece of land.
Oh, thank you. I thought there was an address in Leicester was mentioned.
Yeah, I think the address in Leicester was a correspondence address that the applicant was using, and has confirmed that they're no longer using that address. From their sort of statement of personal circumstances, they're understood to have lived at a sort of a variety of different locations, but one of those did previously include an authorised site within Newark.
Thank you.
The chairman's just taken himself out of the meeting inadvertently. He'll be back in just a second.
Thank you, Councillor Reid.
Sorry. Okay, I'm back
You're back.
in there. I don't know quite what happened. My apologies. I was about to ask Shelley if there were any further members wishing to speak or contribute to the debate.
No, there's no further members in the chat box, no.
Okay, so we'll draw the debate to a close then and ask either...
Sorry, I think mine's late coming in. Sorry, it was a question back to Phil about what he just said. Sorry, I think I forgot to press the arrow.
Okay, Penny, carry on.
Sorry, Bill, when you say that they were residents on a site in Newark, I seem to recall a planning inspector recently saying that if the applicant hadn't followed due process, had bought a site and moved on, but they'd voluntarily moved themselves off a site, that it was at their risk, and you know, because they had a site they were already residing on where they had familial support and schooling. So that's not a particularly favourable argument for them to reside on this site, is it?
Are you able to respond, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just adds to the weighting balance, really. So there's that primary policy consideration, you know, does the application comply with the development plan, and then the other material considerations. And I think what has been sort of said in the report that considers the reasons for refusal that comes back, whilst we don't have a allocated supply of sites within the district, which would lead us to give more weight to the you know, the personal circumstances of the applicant, the fact that they've moved from an authorised site would be a reasonable argument to sort of temper that weight. And I think that's effectively what the appeal inspector said on the other site that Councillor Milnes is talking about.
Thank you, Phil. Jeff, do you want to come in at this stage and comment on any points made by members?
I don't appear to see Jeff in the meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we'll have to move on. I don't know where Jeff is. He might have had to go to another meeting. Okay, so we've heard the comments and contribution from members. We move on to the vote. Do I have any proposition, please?
Sorry, Bob, if we haven't had Jeff's response to my query about an extra inclusion in the conditions, in the reasons for refusal, could we hear back from Phil on that? Because I think following on from Phil Dilks's, comments, you know, about these reports, I feel it puts us in a weak position, and we do have some policy reasons from the local plan and from the planning guidance for travellers to add in what I've just requested. So perhaps if Jeff's not there, Phil could answer those queries before we move to a vote.
Are you able to respond? Excuse me, are you able to respond, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll probably just reiterate what I said already. I mean, I think in terms of the visual impact and any harm that would arise from that to the character and appearance of the area, you know, I think from what's been said, there is a policy within the plan that requires a high quality of design, and a consideration is the proposal should make a positive impact to the character of the area. If members feel that this doesn't do that, and there would therefore be conflict with policy DE1 and you know, potentially EM1, which is about the landscape character. So I think if there was a form of words which sort of articulated, you know, what that harm was, you know, based on the proposed development, that could be included as a reason that you know, could be defended.
Penny, are you able to put a...
Yes, well, thank you, Phil. I mean, I do think we've got those local plan policies you've quoted, But also, I'm looking at the planning guidance for travellers, PPT, whatever it's called, and paragraph 26. It would conflict with that quite badly as well, wouldn't it? With the fencing and it not being previously developed land, the land, it's not enhancing the environment. Also, you know, the gypsy sites are not meant to be behind high fences. This, again, it comes in with the high level of design and the pictures. Trying to think on the hoof how I would phrase it, but those are the policies that I would say it's in conflict with. And I think that would beef up the reasons for refusal. I think, bearing in mind you've said that it's a reasonable argument that they left an allocated site. I am worried that, and I said it in the previous meeting, that we're vulnerable to these pop-up sites, and I think we should be using our policies in a stronger way. So I would like that included, please.
Thank you, Penny. Councillor Reid, Robert has indicated he wishes to speak again, I think. Careful that we don't open this up to debate again. We've sort of closed the debate and moved on to decision time. But Robert,
I won't open. I won't debate. I think a point of information, listening to a previous speaker, Phil Dilks, Councillor Phil Dilks, is that there is bunding at Colsterworth, whereas a 1.8 metre or 2 metre wooden fence is not noise bunding. And I think on that basis, I would concur with my colleague Penny Milne, including DE1, and on including DE1 and the reasoning for that, I am reconfirming my decision to uphold our decision for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Harris, no, we're not going into debate again, Harris. Thank you. You've had the opportunity to pardon me, participate in the debate. Phil, how do we deal with this in terms of process? Do we have an adjournment while you put a couple of or put the meat on that skeleton?
Do you want to give me 2 minutes, and if I put something on the screen, a form of words, and then it would allow. Okay. I mean, they are words that are from the Councillor Milne's sort of original submission. So it'll just be a case of pulling out the relevant wording and then putting it on the screen. But if you give me 2 minutes, I'll do that.
Well, if we make it 5, if anybody wants a comfort break, they'll have time for a quick comfort break. So don't take yourselves out of the meeting, folks. We'll reconvene just before 10 to 11. Phil Jordan, are you about there? Can we do a roll call, make sure everybody's back, or are we slightly premature?
Chairman, it's Chris here.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
Just give us 2 seconds, if that's okay, please, Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Just let me know when you're ready to put it up on screen. Okay.
Will do, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back on, Chairman.
Yeah, Chairman's with you in a sec now as well, Phil.
Sorry, Phil, I'd take my ears off. Okay, fire away, Phil, if you're ready. Can you hear me, Phil?
I can, yeah.
Thank you.
So you just let me know when the slide comes up.
Yeah, slides come up, Phil.
Chairman, it's Martha. We just need to do a quick roll call. Just to make
Oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you, Martha. Yes. Naomi?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Martha. Councillor David Bellamy.
Present.
Councillor Harish Bisnal Singh.
Present.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
Present.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
Present.
Councillor Mike Exton.
Present.
Councillor Mrs Rosemary Cabery Brown. Councillor Cabery Brown. I'll come back to her. Councillor Penny Milnes.
Present.
Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Present.
Councillor Robert Reid.
Present.
Councillor Ian Selby.
Present.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
Present.
Councillor Mrs Judy Smith.
Present.
And Councillor Bob Adams.
Present.
So, Mr Chairman, it would seem that at the minute we're just missing Councillor Cabery Brown, although, as you're aware, she wasn't present at the meeting when this was previously considered. So I don't know if you want to continue anyway.
I am there. Hello.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, it keeps going off. Anyway, yes, I'm here. I'm present.
Thank you. That's noted. So all members present, Chairman.
Chairman's muted. Naomi, can you just put him back in, please?
Yes, Chairman, I've unmuted you. You should be able to speak.
This is what happens. It nips into mute.
Oh, we still can't hear you, Chairman. Yeah, the chairman can't hear at the moment.
Okay.
Still got a problem.
Councillor Reid, could you please try tell him to try leaving the meeting and then coming back in? Sometimes that resolves the issue.
If that's what we've
Thank
got
you.
to do. Chairman's screen has frozen, so it's going to have to go right out. Thank you. Yeah, whilst that's happening, can we ask our officer Phil Jordan to just read through the reason for refusal, so as that we're in readiness to take the vote?
No, it's all come back again for some reason.
Good.
No idea
well,
what's
that's
happened.
A relief.
It is. It's a relief for me as well. Okay, so Penny, can you see the?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. Yes.
Can you minimise that screen again, Phil, please? Because I've now lost my icons again, and I've not touched anything. Am I coming?
Is that?
You're back in full view now, Chairman.
Yeah, but I've still not got my icons at the bottom of the screen that are giving me the.
Oh, I'm with you.
The icons. Okay, but can you hear me?
I can do, yeah.
Okay, let's carry on, and if necessary, I'll go out and come back in again. Right, Phil. Penny, are you happy with the reasons that Phil's put on the screen?
Yes, that includes a couple of them, and I think I'm happy to add that on. I think that would be great. So I'll second Robert's proposal.
Well, I'm just going to ask Robert first of all if he's happy with the amendment, with the additions.
Sorry.
Yes, right. I certainly am, Chairman. I think we're at 1 now. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Chairman, I haven't got anything on the screen now properly.
Yeah, but we can hear you, Jackie, so not a problem.
Right.
Do you want me to? Sorry, Chairman. Do you want me to read out that reason for refusal, just for clarity?
Yes, I was going to say just for for absolute certainty. Yes, please.
Yeah. So, just to confirm, and I have discussed this with the interim head of planning, who's now
back with us
in the meeting. You know, prior to sort of putting this forward in any case. So based on the discussion and the debate, my understanding was that Councillor Milnes had proposed an additional reason for refusal that was originally put forward within the 5-day submission, and that's largely based on the design and visual impact of the proposed development. So the additional reason for refusal would be the proposed development, by virtue of its design, siting and layout, would fail to make a positive contribution to local distinctiveness and the character of the area. So they're the two specific requirements from policy DE1. So it's contrary to policy DE1 and then planning policy for traveller sites 2015 paragraph 26, which is the paragraph Councillor Milnes referenced, which talks about the high quality of design for these type of sites, and boundary treatments and layout and everything else is covered in that.
Thank you for that, Phil. Happy, Penny? Happy, Robert? Okay, can we move to the vote, please, Naomi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to confirm, I won't be calling on Councillor Mrs. Rosemary Cabey-Brown or Councillor Charmaine Morgan because they weren't present when this was last considered. And also the results of this vote and how members vote will be included in the minutes, so it's a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi.
Councillor David Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Harish Bisnal Singh. I think we might have lost Councillor Bisnal Singh. I will come back to him at the end and see if he's managed to get back in. Councillor Helen Crawford.
Abstain.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Penny Milnes.
For.
Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Ian Selby.
Sorry guys, my view hasn't changed since the previous meeting. I'm against.
Councillor Jackie Smith. Councillor Jackie Smith.
So against.
Councillor Mrs. Judy Smith.
For.
Councillor Bob Adams.
For.
Can I just go back, please, to clarify? Do we have Councillor Harris Bismouthing in the meeting with us now?
Naomi, I've just checked and it appears that he's gone offline, so it could possibly be that he's lost connection. I'll ask IT to give him a call. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that since we've lost Councillor Bismouthing and we don't know at what point he didn't hear the end of the discussion and the clarification as to what the proposal was, I think we should, well, it's at your discretion, but I think that perhaps we should not include him in this vote.
You would register that as abstaining?
I can do.
Martha, would that be the correct way, or just note that?
I think it would be better to note that he dropped out and didn't take part, because we obviously can't know that he would have exercised abstain or anything.
Thank you, Martha. With that in mind, Mr. Chairman, the proposal has been carried because there was 7 votes for, 2 votes against and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Naomi. I still haven't got my icons back on my screen, but I'm going to go on to item 5 on the agenda, which again is a part heard one. And after that, I'll call for an adjournment and then try and get back properly. I don't know, never had this one before. I've tried everything I know to get it back, and nothing is happening at all. Okay, so we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, S200564, again part heard, and again in the capable hands of Phil Jordan. Phil, please.
Can I just come in for a second, Chairman? Just to confirm that Jeff Upton is online, according to us. Could you just ask him to confirm that he is with us?
Yeah, hi, Councillor Reid. Yes,
good.
I'm here.
Lovely,
Okay,
thank you. Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Lovely. Now, I don't know what's happening to my screen today. I've now got only myself and Jeff Upton on it. So let me see if I can get. And it won't let me go back to gallery view. Oh, I've got Phil Jordan. Okay, well carry on. Can folk hear me? Can you hear me, Phil?
I can,
yes,
yeah.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. And what the devil's happening here? Okay, item 5 then, S200564, please, Phil.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. So next application, again, it's a part heard application for the erection of 3 dwellings, land south of 141 Stamford Street in Grantham. So again, members will recall this application was discussed at the 17th of February Planning Committee. Again, it was recommended for approval, and members voted that they were minded to refuse the application contrary to officer recommendation. Again, members that voted to refuse the application put forward their suggested reasons for refusal, and these have been considered by the, should say, their interim head of planning, but it's effectively the same role in a written report which has been published and forms part of the agenda. So just to remind members, the application site itself is located to the south of Stamford Street in Grantham, which in itself is broadly to the south of the town. Members that know the site, Springfield Road is the site that runs out of Grantham under the railway bridge, and then you have these 2 terrace streets, Victoria Street and Stamford Street, which form a one-way loop. You enter on Victoria Street, which is on the left though, as you look at your screen, and then come back down Stamford Street. So just looking at the site a bit closer, you can see there's a gap in the existing street. 141 being the last property on the terrace, and then this is the application site here where my cursor is. So the red line here, that just outlines the application site. So you can see that traditional run of terrace houses comes to an end. There's the gap in the street, and then you have some detached properties as you go around the corner, and then come back down onto Victoria Street. So I've turned this plan upside down just to keep it orientated the same way as those other plans. So you can see the 3 dwellings that are proposed are in a short terrace block, set back from the back edge of the footpath, but not set back as if, far enough distance that would allow parking on the front. It does allow a short pedestrian access that would then allow access to all 3 properties' rear gardens, where the bins are proposed to be stored. So this is the application site as proposed. So you can see from the front it's that single building which would have effectively the 3 dwellings. Each property 2 bedrooms, sort of typical almost 2 up 2 down type arrangement. And then this slide just shows how that building would sit in the existing street scene. So you can see where the existing terrace comes to an end, and then 143, which is the first detached property you can come to. What you can't quite see on this is that the site or the building's proposed to be sited in sort of a staggered arrangement. So 143 is set back within its plot. And then the existing terrace comes right up to the back edge of the footpath. The proposed development set back sort of a couple of metres, so it's somewhere between the layout of, or the position of 143 and 141. So this is the site. You can see currently fairly untidy site. It does have a single access point into it at the moment. Looking back up towards the detached property. Then this is looking back down Stamford Street towards Springfield Road. So you can see, we'll come on to the reasons for refusal, but a significant amount of on-street parking on the street. And then you can see these are the detached properties that, or semi-detached and detached properties as you go around the top of Stamford Street back onto Victoria Street. So the reasons that came forward as suggested reasons for refusal that have been discussed in the report. The first one primarily centres around the lack of parking and the impact this would have on neighbouring properties' amenity. That's, I guess, linked to the overdevelopment of the site. So as proposed, the 3 dwellings would take up almost the entire width of the site and sit quite far forward in the site itself, therefore not leaving any space for off-road parking. And then there was some discussion also about the impact on the character of the area. So going on to the suggested or defensible reason for refusal, if I come firstly back onto this slide, I think in terms of the impact on the character of the area, I'll just skip back through the slides. It is a bit of a transition site really, between these existing terrace properties and then the newer detached and semi-detached properties at the top of the street. You can see from this slide that in terms of scale, and design, it's would create a reasonable amount of sort of harmony with the existing street. And I think to given you've got these differences in styles along the street at the moment, and the existing appearance of the site, which is pretty untidy from a visual point of view, I think it would be very difficult to defend a reason in terms of visual impact. However, the parking issue, we took some further, or had some further discussions with the Highway Authority, and whilst the parking issue isn't considered to be a highways reason for refusal, so it wouldn't create sort of additional or significant additional traffic, and it's not considered to result in any unacceptable highway safety issues. There is a reason there around the amenity on the existing residents that had been upheld in a previous appeal within the district. And what that argument really says is that by introducing those additional properties on the street, you're creating additional parking pressures in an already sort of pressured environment for parking, and that can result in sort of more competition for parking spaces, people having to park further from their homes, and it's generally an impact on the amenity of not just the existing residents but the proposed occupiers of the properties themselves. So in terms of capturing that into a single reason for refusal based on what members had submitted, it's the reason on the screen. The proposed development with no parking provision would exacerbate existing pressures of on-street parking, result in more residents having to park away from their homes. That is in itself symptomatic of overdevelopment of the site. So clearly there are other alternative ways of developing the site, potentially based on a reduced amount of dwellings where some provision for off-road parking could be included. That would impact on the amenity of existing properties and not result in the high standard of amenity for the future occupiers of the proposed dwellings. And then it just lists out the policies that's contrary to in the local plan. Thank you, Chairman. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Phil. And I'm back to, I think I'm back to normal. Yes, I am. Okay. Any questions for Phil Jordan, please?
Mr. Chairman, it's
Yes,
Mike. Point of information. Was this actually minded to refuse, or was it deferred?
I think it was minded to refuse. No, I don't think it was.
I got an idea it was deferred.
Well, if we let's have a look at the minutes, Mike, just for absolute clarity.
I might be wrong, but I'm just clarifying the point.
Yep, let's have a quick look at the minutes.
It was definitely minded to refuse, Chairman.
Yeah, I think it was, but
I think
confirm that.
Yeah, I think Councillor Exton, there was discussion around deferral, but given we've got the cooling off period, I think that what was suggested was that by going through that minded to refuse process, it would effectively defer the decision on the application in any case, but allow these reasons for refusal to be considered. In the intervening time, the applicant hasn't chosen to withdraw the application or make any further amendments to the scheme, so we're now just in a position where we're considering the scheme as submitted based on the members' submitted reasons for refusal.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you. Shelley, any questions to Phil, please, from members?
Yes, Councillor Ian Selby.
Councillor Selby, Ian, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You may recall, Phil, at the previous meeting, it was my view that I'd like to have seen the houses, this application set back so that it allow some parking spaces on the front. Just looking at the pictures that you've showed us, and I couldn't help but notice that on some of the pictures there was double yellow lines, but I accept that they were on the corners, on the bends of the road. However, on one of the slides, I believe it's on the road of this application, there was some double yellow lines. And now, with a shortage of parking spaces, could you just tell me what those double yellow lines on that particular road for those being there, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know the exact,
I can probably help there, Phil. It's for visual display and road safety, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, Chairman and Councillor Selby, that there is also a single white line in places, and I think, as the Chairman's alluded to, the double yellow lines have a specific, or they're put in there for a specific reason. But one of the issues you do get with these type of streets, where the houses are set back, and I think you'll probably know Dudley Road, for example, where the front gardens are then turned into parking spaces. It doesn't always necessarily solve the problem, because you have to keep that access open. So by creating the drop curb in front of the property, they also then introduce the white line, which restricts parking in front of those properties. So to some extent, whilst you get you can get an increase in off-street parking provision, you also lose some of the on-street parking at the same time. So I think on the photos I showed, there was a combination of there was a single white line, which is where the sort of that access should be kept clear for that individual property, but then the double yellow lines, I think, on these type of streets are put around the corners, because it's as the Chairman sort of alluded to, it's more of a safety concern, and I presume that is to do with access for emergency vehicles. Sometimes refuse vehicles can't get around the corners, so that would be the difference in the road markings.
Okay, so five engines as well and that sort of thing. But on that particular picture I was referring to, it looked like a straight road. I do get the safety aspect on the bends, but I was just wanted to question the double yellows on that straight road. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Any further questions?
Yes, please.
Shelley, any further questions?
Yes, please.
All right, Jackie, but take your time. Shelley.
We've got Councillor Phil Dilks in the chat box, Chairman. And
you've got Councillor Jackie Smith's name in the list as well, have you?
She's not in the chat box, no, only indicated over the...
I can't see a chat box.
Okay, Jackie. Can you call Jackie Smith after we've had the questions from Phil Dilks, please, Shelley?
Certainly, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dilks, Phil, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I noted originally I mean, thank you, Phil, for the work that you've done since the first hearing, particularly with regard to talking with highways. Originally, of course, the highways didn't have any objections, which I found a bit bizarre personally, but I found it interesting that you said that the parking is not a highways issue. But I'll not dwell on that, because that probably helps us. If it was a highways issue, we couldn't then dismiss this on parking problems. But my question really relates to what Councillor Selby and yourself have just spoken about, and I do absolutely agree with you that if these properties were set back, 3 properties, and provided parking in front of the houses, we'd have 3. We would not solve the problem for the reason that you said. And I just wonder if we can, if there is any wording that we can put into the reasons for refusal that would encapsulate that and not encourage the applicant to come back with the parking in front of the houses. Can you see where I'm going?
Phil Jordan, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess first of all, on the highway point, the Highway Authority continue not to object to the proposal. They, as we often sort of refer to their MPPF guidance around severe traffic impact or highway safety. And I think in this instance, that sort of pressured parking environment is neither of those. But as I say, what they did do, which was helpful, was sort of highlight an appeal, which was from memory on Casterton Road in Stamford, which had some similar sort of characteristics where there was a pressured on-street parking environment, and as I say, what it does do is it sort of just puts that pressure on competition for parking spaces, and then, as I said, you link that to the residential amenity argument. I think I understand the point you're making. I don't think that's necessarily something we would capture in a reason for refusal. I think no doubt if this application gets refused, there would be further dialogue with the applicant over what they did next, and they may decide to appeal the decision, or they may decide to submit an amended application, or they may decide to do both. And at that point, I think we could sort of highlight some of the things that have been discussed. That would probably be the appropriate time and way to do that.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil. My point also on that was if we did have those driveways off, it would cause further conflict, and that would be contrary to planning policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Jackie Smith, please.
Right. Thank.
Can you speak, Jackie? You've unmuted yourself, or have you muted yourself again? Can you hear me, Jackie? Oh.
Right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Jackie. Thank you.
Right. When we had this come up last time, it was in the paperwork I've got. It's number 10 application, and the recommendation at the time that the application is approved conditionally. Have we changed our minds?
Yeah, what we did at the last meeting, Jackie, was we were minded to refuse, which then gave us that space to put those reasons for minding to refuse to the officers. So this has brought it back now to take into consideration and for the officer to comment on the reasons given by members for a possible refusal.
Right, because these sort of areas in the older parts of Grantham are quite normal.
Yes, yeah.
And,
they were built many years ago for workers working on London Road, etc.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I think if people when they looking for buying houses, if they can see, it's up to them, isn't it? If they want to put further houses on there.
It's up to us whether it complies with all our policies.
Yes, yeah, well, they've got that option, haven't they, as well?
Yeah, okay. I think, sorry, Chairman, I think Councillor Smith, in this case, clearly there's lots of streets that have this existing problem, and in those situations there's not a huge amount we can do from a planning point of view, and as you say, it's buyers beware, or renters beware in those situations. In this case, the proposal is to introduce 3 new dwellings, which would effectively make that problem worse, and that's really what's being considered in this case from a planning point of view. It's the additional impacts from the proposal as opposed to the existing situation.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, Jackie.
Yeah, well, I think if we feel that it's too much, if we feel that it's too much, then we should say so and say it's not suitable for having development there.
I think that's probably what we are saying, or that what is proposed is not suitable, Jackie. But we're now getting into debate, Jackie. We're trying. Can I go back to questions to Phil, Shelley? Are there any further questions to Phil, please?
Yes, Councillor Penny Milnes.
Councillor Milnes, Penny, please.
Yes, a quick question, Phil, going back to the photographs of the site. It does look like there is a drop curb with a single access into the site, but also the brick wall to the left-hand side of the picture, away from the detached property, would suggest that half of the site was amenity land of some description. So I'm not quite sure whether this is what we would class the use of this land as. And bearing in mind we are trying to go greener and parking, and I appreciate, I totally accept the reasons for refusal as overdevelopment, is moving forward to what might be acceptable on that site would be restricted, wouldn't it? Because anyway, I just thought I'd ask you that as to what exactly the site comprised of. It looks to me like two pieces have been put together and there was amenity land at one point. And whether we need a little bit more amenity land in the future there.
Thank you, Penny. Phil, are you able to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the benefits of the proposal from a highway point of view was that it would be closing off that existing access on and off the street. So I think that's something they highlighted in their comments. In terms of exactly what that site was historically, I'm not certain. It could have been additional garden space to 141. It's difficult to know, but I think in terms of whether the principle of development is acceptable or not, it clearly is a gap in a frontage. In any case, it's in the middle of Grantham, which is right at the top of the development hierarchy. So I think to resist all forms of development on the site would be very difficult. But I think in this instance, a reduced form of development may be appropriate to overcome some of the reasons that have been set out by members.
Thank you, Phil. Shelley, are there any more specific questions to the case officer, please?
I can't see any more questions. The only requests are to speak in debate, Chairman.
Okay, so final call for questions. Can we move into debate then, please? So first speaker in the debate, please, Shelley.
Councillor Robert Reid.
Councillor Reid. Robert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I quite honestly think that the proposal for 3 houses on this still remains as overdevelopment. And therefore, I think that we should uphold our reasons for refusal. The 3 that have been given in Section 3 by the Interim of Planning, but in particular that of overdevelopment, of trying to squeeze 3 properties into this space with no parking provision in a congested area. And I'm prepared to propose that. And I see in the chat box that there are other people wishing to speak, but I have a seconder. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Robert. Can I just formally take a seconder?
I'll second that, Chairman.
Seconding, Bob, I put in the box.
Okay.
Sorry, Connie.
So it looks as though a number of members of the committee are seconding. Are there any more speakers in the debate, please, Shelley?
Yes, Councillor Phil Dilks.
Councillor Dilks. Phil, please.
And me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I do support, as I've just indicated, I would be happy to second or propose whatever, but a refusal. I just wanted to reply to what a colleague said about buyer beware. I think we have got a responsibility, and within the rules, within the material considerations, of not adding to a problem. And there are clear parking pressures, serious parking pressures. You've only got to look at the pictures to see them in this case, and we shouldn't just be adding to those pressures, and they're not just pressures. I'm sure we did hear in the that these pressures lead to conflict with residents, and it is about residential amenity as well. But I support the proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Phil. Any further speakers in the debate, please?
Councillor Rosemary Caberry-Brown.
Councillor Caberry-Brown. Rosemary, please.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first and foremost, we are supposed to be looking to be a more green society. I would have thought it was a much better idea. I agree 100% on refusal of the planning permission for this area. I think it would be a good idea to suggest that perhaps they could be kind enough to utilise the land and make it into a small play park. And in the pandemic, at least people would be able to go out of their gardens, meet up with friends, and be keeping themselves well apart from each other. I think we've got we're on a bound to start thinking this way, and to try and push 3 more houses in there beggars belief, to be honest, Mr. Chairman. So I would definitely go along with refusal, but I would like to suggest that the land be kept green and be used for recreation. That's my words on it.
Thank you, Rosemary. Any further speakers in debate, please, Shelley?
Yes, Councillor Ian Selby.
Councillor Selby. Ian, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's actually, I'm in the minority again, and so be it, but I just happen to think that for me, that particular property, I thought it sits in nicely in that particular gap, and I just thought it was a nice transition as well. However, I've listened to colleagues on this issue, and I take on board what you're saying. I did originally think, if you move the property back, get the car parking spaces on the front. However, you create some spaces, and somehow they do get filled, don't they? It's like a dual carriageway, expanding it to a motorway. You create that extra capacity, and it soon fills up again, doesn't it? So, I take on board what you're saying about the parking provision. But personally, I thought it sat in nice, but I'm minded to probably abstain on this, taking on board colleagues' concerns on this. So that's my view, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ian. Shelley, any further speakers in debate?
No further requests, Chairman.
Yes, please. Jackie Smith.
Yes, Jackie.
I don't know why, but I haven't got any access to the chat box or whatever it is, so I don't have much chance to get in.
No problem.
Yeah, I agree with Rosemary Caberry-Brown. Instead of adding to problems, there are a lot of houses in the area, and yeah, let's put some greenery in it.
Thank you for that, Jackie. Are there any further contributors, Shelley?
None indicated, no, Chairman.
Thank you. So we've had it proposed and seconded. We'll move to the vote. Naomi, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vote 4 is for refusal.
Just to confirm, I won't be calling on Charmaine Morgan to speak, Councillor Charmaine Morgan, because she wasn't present when this was last considered. Also, Councillor Harish Bisnal Singh wasn't present for the majority of the officer's presentation for this item. So could I please have confirmation from Martha as to whether we exclude Councillor Bisnal Singh from this vote as well?
Martha, please.
That would be my opinion, Chairman, and Naomi, yes.
Thank you, Martha.
Very much indeed.
Okay, so moving to the vote. Councillor David Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs. Rosemary Caberry-Brown.
For.
Councillor Penny Milnes.
For.
Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Ian Selby.
Abstain.
Councillor Jackie Smith. Councillor Jackie Smith.
For.
Councillor Mrs Judy Smith.
For.
And Councillor Bob Adams.
For.
So that proposal is carried. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you, Naomi. I'm now going to move that we have a 5 or 6 minute comfort break. Get back here for 20 to 12, please. I do that because I think the next item might take a little while. So comfort break till 20 to 12, please.
Bob? Oh.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, Bob. I'd just like to say I have received in the post about half an hour ago an additional information report, and it's to do with the land north of Wolfsford Lane, Ancaster, and it's several pages.
I think we all had them electronically Monday or Tuesday. Monday. Yes, we've all had them, Judy, but we've had them electronically as well as hard copy.
Righto, thank you.
Okay. So
yes, thank you.
We did confirm that at site visit, Bob, as well.
Yeah. We'll reconvene at 20 to 12, please.
Twenty to 12.
Okay, are we starting to come back together again, please? Naomi, are you...
I'm here, Bob. Councillor Adams, do you want me to do a roll call to check everyone's here?
Yeah, I know I can't see Councillor Reid back in the chamber yet, but let's get as many done as we can, and then hopefully Robert will catch up with us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, members, I'm just going to go through the roll call again. If you could indicate if you're with us in the meeting. Councillor David Bellamy.
Present.
Councillor Harish Bisnath Singh.
Harish, are you there?
Councillor Bisnath Singh, I've unmuted you.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Harish.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
Present.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
Present.
Councillor Mike Exton.
Present.
Councillor Mrs Rosemary Cabery-Brown.
Present.
Councillor Penny Milnes.
Present.
Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Present.
Councillor Robert Reid.
He's not back in the chamber yet.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Selby.
Present.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
Present.
Councillor Mrs Judy Smith.
Present.
And we have the chairman present.
Present.
So it's just Councillor Robert Reid that we're waiting for, Mr Chairman.
Okay, I don't know whether he's been called away to another meeting. I think we'll proceed and take a judgment as we go along. Okay, so this application is agenda item number 7, S201169. We have one speaker for this, in the ward member, Councillor Ian Stokes, but Chris Brown for the presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Please just bear with me a second. I'll get the presentation loaded up.
And if we could just confirm that Councillor Reid is back, obviously before Chris Brown begins the presentation. Obviously it's fine for him to be loading it, but we just need that confirmation.
Okay, I'll leave my microphone on, but we will proceed whether he's here or not, and then he might have to. Okay, the presentation is on, so we'll go forward without Councillor Reid. I think he did.
Sorry, you've just been muted there, Chairman. Would you like me to continue, or do you want to hold on?
Sorry, I'm not. I don't know what's. Yes, please, Chris. I was just saying Councillor Reid isn't back yet, but we will continue, and he will perhaps have to exclude himself from the vote, etc. So yes, carry on, Chris. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, Planning Committee. This application is for land north of Wilsford Lane, Ancaster, and the application is for the erection of up to 96 dwellings. The application is an outline application with access to be considered only. Key issues raised as part of the application include the principle of development, impact on the character and appearance of the area, and highway impact. This is a high-level view of the site, so it shows the application site to be located to the southeast of Ancaster, north of Wilsford Lane and north of Sleaford Road. Zooming in a bit closer with a low-level aerial view, this shows the proximity of the site to neighbouring dwellings to the west, and the site is in arable agricultural use, and as you'll see on the next slide, is not for development of this whole field in the centre of your screens. So moving on, this is the red line application of the site. So again, if I flick back briefly to the previous slide, you can see that's the field at the moment. And then the red line plan of the site is for roughly just over half of that field, not the entire field. Moving on to some photos of the site and surroundings. So this photo is of Wilsford Lane looking west back towards Ancaster. This is across the road from the site, so this is land south of Wilsford Lane. This field is also allocated in the local plan for residential development, which is something I'll come back to later. This is the view at Wilsford Lane looking northeast. And again, this is looking up towards the junction with Sleaford Road at the top there. This is now from within the site, so this is from the corner of the field from Wilsford Lane looking northeast across the site. Now from the same point in the corner looking north along the western boundary of the site. And again, from a similar place now, this is now looking along the southern boundary along Wilsford Lane. And now this is looking back to where those previous photos were taken from, back towards Wilsford Lane. Now this is looking west, so the dwellings you can see beyond the boundary there are off hillside. This is the lower part of the western boundary. Dwellings on hillside are set back from the boundary and a mix of 2-storey and single-storey dwellings. This is now moving up the boundary to dwellings of Mercia Drive and again of Mercia Drive. And now these are the dwellings of Saxon Way, so this is still moving further up the western boundary, and again of Saxon Way dwellings. And then this is a view looking back down that boundary of the site. Now moving further up within the site, this is a view from the northwest corner of the site looking back down to the western boundary of the site. Sorry, from the northeastern corner of the site looking back down to the western boundary. And again, from within the site, looking west back towards Ancaster from higher up than the previous one. This is beyond the red line boundary, so still within the same field, but beyond the line of the red line. And again, looking from a slightly different perspective back over Ancaster. This is the local plan allocation map for Ancaster. So we're now discussing site LVH1 to the north of Wilsford Lane. The site allocation is for indicative 96 dwellings in total, with this site proposing up to 96 dwellings on the site. This also shows the proximity of site allocation LVH2 to the south of Wilsford Lane. This is the site policy criteria, so this outlines the criteria-based policy for the whole site, with these set out in the Principle of Development section in the report relating to this application. Moving on, this is the indicative site plan proposed. So the proposal is for up to 96 dwellings in total, with access from Wilsford Lane in the southwest corner of the site, as shown there. The layout is indicative only, with amendments required to the layout at reserved matter stage in order for it to be acceptable. However, the indicative layout does show a suitable planted buffer to the new southeastern boundary within the site, retention and strengthening of hedgerow and tree boundaries, a mix of dwelling sizes on site, and public open space. Drainage on site makes use of infiltration, with each plot using soakways and infiltration balancing ponds replaced with public open space and road layout within the site. And the proposed 96 dwellings includes provision of 30% affordable housing, which, should it be 96 dwellings, would equate to 29 affordable units on site in total. Moving on, the application proposes a number of off-site highway works along Wilsford Lane. So highway impact was a key theme mentioned in the representations received, and I've broken this slide in front of you down to 4 individual slides to show the proposals more clearly, given that this slide is a bit difficult to read everything going on. So first of all, the proposal includes a new priority junction further west from the site along Wilsford Lane towards the junction with Ermine Street, together with a pedestrian crossing point. Secondly, this is along the access and to the west of the access, with a 5.5 metre access and 2 metre pavements proposed, together with upgrading of the existing footway to a 2.5 metre shared walking and cycleway. It includes widening of the existing carriageway of Wilsford Lane to 4.8 metres wide, and moving the 30-mile-an-hour signs and upgrading of the existing bus stop, all on Wilsford Lane. Next is now further east along Wilsford Lane. This shows again the relocation of the 30-mile-an-hour limit, upgrading of the existing narrow footway to a 2.5 metre wide shared walking cycleway. This goes all the way along the road, and also includes the upgrading and formalisation of an existing lay-by, shown in the bottom right there of your screen. And then finally, we've now moved further east to the junction with Sleaford Road, with the 2.5 metre shared footway cycleway still continuing all the way up to the top. A new crossing point proposed and a formal weight limit to be secured, along with the 30-mile-an-hour limit to be moved through the section 106, with the remaining works to be secured through a planning condition. In terms of evaluation, the site is allocated for residential development in the local plan, policy LVH1, with this application proposing up to 96 dwellings. The application is outline only, with a principle of development being considered through this outline application and to be established by the local plan site allocation. No objections have been received from statutory consultees. A series of off-site highway works are proposed, as previously run through. These have been agreed with LCC Highways and are secured through a combination of conditions in Section 106. The proposal includes retention of trees and hedges and includes a planted buffer to form a new southeastern boundary within the site, within that existing wider field. The indicative layout is indicative only. Further amendments are required through reserve matters for this to be acceptable, with a note to applicant included stating that the indicative layout will require amendments come reserve matter stage. Residential amenity concerns as part of representations are noted. However, the application is outline only and is considered that the site can accommodate up to 96 dwellings without impacting on neighbouring amenity. The neighbouring dwellings to the west are either sufficiently set back from the boundary or are side onto the site with a blank side elevation, with the exception of one dwelling on Saxon Way. Section 106 contributions are set out in the report and include contributions to County Council Education, NHS CCG for the local practice, affordable housing provision, the off-site highway works as mentioned, and community facilities as well. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and completion of the Section 106 agreement. I'll end the slideshow there, Chairman, although I do have one slide to show for Councillor Stokes as well, so I'll happily bring that up when ready.
Thank you, Chris. Before calling on Councillor Ian Stokes to address the committee, just for confirmation, Councillor Reid joined the meeting just as you were beginning to speak, Chris. For the record, Naomi, he was here for the whole of that presentation, and I do notice in the people joining the meeting, we have a representative from the Stamford Mercury. I just want to say, if that is an expectation of recovering item 6 on the agenda, that has been withdrawn, but of course you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you wish to do so.
Thank you, Chairman. It was the skin on my teeth isn't very thick today. Thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor Ian Stokes, please, to address the committee.
I've pressed the red button, so I'm hopeful that you can hear me now.
I can hear you, Ian. Thank you. Yes.
We can see you too, Ian. Good morning.
Can you? Oh, what a shame. Not that good. I'm confused, actually, with what Chris Brown said, what this is for. Because on the agenda item it says this is for access only, but now you are mentioning an indicative plan. So are we discussing just access? But if you get access, you're going to want to go further, aren't you? Anyway, the start of this particular field was in when Sarah Brewman and Sarah Watson visited the Parish Council of Ancaster on the 16th of October 2017, explaining what the local plan was about. The only site that was mentioned at that particular stage was the 35 developments on LVH2, which was rather strange. But then the consultative draft local plan to 2017, no reference was made to LVH1 35 dwellings, which was the initial stage of LVH1. No further visits were made to the Parish Council, but the 2018 publication of the map, which I have requested there, shows both LVH1 and LVH2. Both being shown, but I suspect the numbers were at that stage only 35 dwellings. Without any further contact with Ancaster Parish Council, the local plan 2011-2036 issued in January 2020 showed LVH1 being increased without any discussion to 96 dwellings. Now the number of properties within Ancaster in 2011, according to the plan, was 636. So, you know, a percentage increase of 96 plus 35 in the village of that size is really very horrendous and shouldn't be stated at that figure. I'm asked at the initial meeting for the plan to include the infill on Ermine Way between the post office and the railway station. This was obviously not particularly looked at, but I understand from the parish clerk that the owner of the land is the Prince of Wales. But there is an impact on highway safety, and the road is so narrow. What they showed on that report was not sufficient to warrant me. I mean, it is a bus route, not that it's many, and there is a village with the railway station, but there's only 3 trains a day.
3 minutes.
Sorry?
You've had your 3 minutes here, and are you ready to wind up?
I'll wind up then. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that, Ian. So we now move on to questions to Chris, and I think these could be interesting. We did have a site visit here, very interesting site visit, and I've no doubt 1 or 2 issues will arise from that as we go through. So questions to Chris Brown, please. Shelley?
Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Councillor Morgan, Charmaine, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Stokes, for your presentation there. It was very informative, the background. I've got a few, if I may, regarding the slides. First of all, I noticed reference to the plans to improve the footpaths access and the highways along the main lane. Will they impact on the existing vegetation? Because we've come a cropper with that before, where we've been told that we'll be retaining all the hedgerow and all of a sudden it disappears because actually the widening of the main road for access impacts significantly on it. So that's the first question.
Sorry, have you got a further question, Charmaine, or would you like that responding to now?
Yeah, I have. The other was relating to the diagram. If I look at page 61, in fact, there's several views, show the estate next door to the development site. And I'm starting to notice quite a number of the houses have got overlooking windows in close proximity to the boundary of the site. What would the treatment be? So if I look at Saxon Way, for example, there's a number of houses there that actually have either end windows or, in fact, the rear of the houses overlook the site. What would the treatment be of the boundary there? And in particular on Saxon, I think it was Saxon Way, no, sorry, Mercia Drive. Again, we've got properties that could be directly affected by boundary treatment. And Mercia Drive, we clearly have a house which is a significantly lower elevation to this site. So I'd like again to know exactly what the proposed boundary treatment would be there and how that may impact on that property.
Okay, can we ask Chris just to respond to those 2? Have you got any more questions, Charmaine?
Well, I did have one, but I'm not sure how relevant it is. But certainly, have we or have the consultant liaised with Links Fire and Rescue to ensure that there would be appropriate supply and access to the site in the event of a fire? So that was quite a key one, of course.
Okay, Charmaine. I think Chris is, excuse me. I think Chris might respond that this is outline application only, and all the questions you've raised will be dealt with at reserved matters, but I'll leave Chris to respond in his own unique way.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Yes, Chairman, I'm going to respond along similar lines, but just to take each of your questions in turn, Councillor Morgan. So the first one you mentioned with regards to the widening of the road and widening of the footpaths, that won't impact on there's a very strong hedgerow and tree boundary along Wilsford Lane. It won't impact on that. So next to that hedgerow and tree boundary, there's a very, very wide highway verge. So there's an existing narrow footpath within it, so that will be effectively resurfaced and widened, but all that widening will take place within highway land, within the highway verge, so it won't take place and won't eat into the site boundary of hedgerow and trees at all, so there won't be any loss of trees or hedgerows with that. For your second point on the impact on dwellings to the west, so on the western side it sort of goes up in 3 stages. So first of all, the dwellings sort of hillside, which is access down onto Wilsford Lane, they are set a bit further back from the boundary, so they have their sort of quite long gardens going onto the boundary. Further up, you mentioned Saxon Way and Mercia Drive. So the dwellings of Saxon Way and Mercia Drive, they are much closer to the boundary than those of Hillside. However, all bar one of them are all side on to the site, so they've obviously been built in such a way that they don't directly overlook the site. They're side on, so any windows in the side elevations either serve, they're effectively non-principal. They might serve a landing or a bathroom, for instance, but there won't be a principal window overlooking the site. And there is one exception to that. There is one dwelling, I think, on Saxon Way at the top, which does have its principal rear elevation looking back to the site, but that's not set bang on the boundary as some of the other ones side on are. That is set further away. But any impact on those dwellings will be taken account of at reserve matters stage. So in the indicative plan submitted, it does show sufficient distances between proposed dwellings and the existing dwellings, so there wouldn't be any amenity impact on the indicative layout submitted, but further details would come forward through reserve matters. And then on your final point on Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue, there's been no comments received from them. The proposed access into the site is considered acceptable. It's 5.5 metres wide. In terms of the internal road layout of the site, as the Chairman mentioned, that would come forward through reserve matters. So the indicative layout does show sufficient road widths in the site, but we'll get further details at reserve matters stage for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. May I just come back, if I may? I know we're being told that this is just an outline plan, but having been here many times before, though not so recently as much as I'd have liked, I'm very aware that if we approve this today, what would happen at the next stage is we will be told, oh, approval's been given for 96 houses to go on this site, and therefore suddenly we're actually quite limited as to the scope of any concerns that we may be able to raise then subsequently, unless we're saying that the number of properties...
Charmaine, you're getting into debate now as opposed to asking questions.
No, well, no, actually...
Could you move to your question, please?
That is my question. The application before us is indicating 96 properties. This was an issue that was just flagged to us by Councillor Stokes, the number of properties. Are we agreeing today what the number of properties will be on the site maximum, or are we simply agreeing whether the site could be developed, because there's a significant difference?
Chairman, I'm happy to come back in to respond to Councillor Morgan. So first of all, I'd say any reserve matters application will come back to committee. So it will be a major application, will come back to committee for determination. And secondly, I'd say that the application is for up to 96 dwellings, so it can't be any more than 96 dwellings. If it was more than 96 dwellings, it wouldn't be reserved matters. It would have to be a different type of application. They can't go above 96. So this application is for up to 96 dwellings as an absolute maximum, and that accords with the local plan policy criteria. That says an indicative 96. This is up to 96. So 97, for instance, would not be appropriate through reserved matters. It can only be a maximum of 96.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. Two things quickly, Chris. Am I right in saying that roads have to be a minimum width, which takes into account the use by emergency vehicles?
That's correct, Chairman, yes. So again, highways haven't sort of provided any further commentary on the internal road layout as part of this application, but they are accepting of the access, which is 5.5 metres wide throughout. Then highways will have further comments at reserve matters stage when it comes into the individual turning heads and any private sort of roads off the main access into the site, for instance.
Yeah. I did ask about the water.
Charmaine, please, I'll call on you.
Certainly.
So we've got other people, I think, wanting to ask questions. Shelley?
Yes, Councillor Phil Dilks.
Councillor Dilks, Phil, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think previous speakers, Councillor Charmaine.
I've put a question in before, Councillor Dilks, and it's been ignored.
Sorry, I'm not in control of what's in the chat box, Mike, but I'll call on you next. Let Phil continue, and then we'll call on you next.
Sorry to interrupt, Phil.
No problem, Mike. I didn't see your name. I can't actually read the names in the box. They're too small for my eyes.
They are very small.
To clarify, Councillor Dilks, your name is before Councillor Exton's, but only just before Councillor Exton.
Perhaps I'm not the only one who can't see it. I just wanted to I have got a question, but it is confusing that we've got an application, that is outline all matters reserved, and yet we have been given a lot of information about it, which we welcome. But how much notice we can take of that is some, we've got some difficulty, haven't we, Chris? But I do notice that the key issues, the first key issue is principle of development. And Chris, could you just clarify? I think you probably did refer to it, but this is however it got there, it is an allocated site, isn't it, within the local plan? However it got there, it is allocated, and my question really is, I have huge sympathy with what Councillor Charmaine said about there is a paragraph within here on page 106, which I really welcome, which is about walking and cycling to school and what I'd call connectivity of this site. And it just sort of says, there's an opportunity to connect with Mercia Drive, etc.
Sorry, Phil, to interrupt you. Can we move to the questions?
Yeah.
Obviously, raise all those in debate. But
it is a question, Mr. Chairman. It's really. I'm sorry, I was too long getting there. But it's how can we, Chris, case officer, please, can we, make that stronger within this application so that the applicant knows that when it comes back, we are going to be looking at footpaths and cycleways. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Chris, do you want to respond to that at this point?
Yes, I can do. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Dilks. So in terms of footpath connectivity, Councillor Dilks, so the existing footpath that runs all the way along the front of Wilsford Lane that we stood on for the site visit the other day, that's proposed to be widened and become a joint walkway and cycleway, so significantly wider than the small path that's there now. At the moment, that's the only access proposed into the site, so that there's no further access proposed within Mercia Drive or Saxon Way. However, that new footpath proposed will link down Wilsford Lane, and it will link to there's a further footpath in the village, only just the other side of Hillside, which you then take a sort of a sharp right, if you like, along the playing field, and that then links back into the village, and you can get around to the school that way as well. So it is still quite walkable and cyclable from the site into the village. I know your point about connection through to Saxon Way, Mercia Drive. That's not proposed at this outline stage, not to say it couldn't come forward at reserved matters, it could. All I'd say on that is the dwellings of Mercia Drive, some way that border the site, there's not a natural sort of hammerhead, if that's the way of putting it, sort of road turning area at the end there to provide an access through. Instead, there's dwellings either on the boundary or garages and residential curtilage on the boundary. So there's not a natural end point, if you like, of Mercia Drive or Saxon Way to connect through. Unfortunately, it's just the way the roads were laid out.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, Phil, for now. Anything else you might bring into debate? Yes?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Shelley, next member question, please.
Councillor Mike Exton.
Councillor Exton, Mike,
thank you, Bob. It's hard for me to contain my disappointment in the inconsistency of highways again, removing 30-mile-an-hour limit signs. Probably Chris could tell me why are they so inconsistent when we demanded, and it's more worthy of moving a signs in Stamford. This is two developments we've had just recently where the 106 agreement is covered moving signs, yet there's they're so inconsistent. of ignoring the request of the ones in Stamford? Probably, can you give me some information why this happens?
I think that's a question, Mike, we should be addressing to County Highways. I think there are points well made, and it perhaps might be appropriate in the not too distant future to invite County Highways back to talk to the Planning Committee and raise these sort of issues with them, Mike. But Chris, I don't know whether you want to add anything further to that.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Exton. All I can add to that is to say that everything is on an individual site-by-site basis, I'm afraid. So with this particular application, I'm afraid I can't talk for Stamford and the sites you're referring to, but for this particular application, at the moment, the 30-mile-an-hour limit is sort of at the bottom of Wilsford Lane as you're coming down a hill into the village, and it would be beyond the proposed access. So highways want that 30-mile-an-hour moving quite a distance up Wilsford Lane, so therefore cars are sufficiently slowing down before then they reach the new access proposed as part of this application. So that's all I can say for this one, and I think it was a couple of months ago I brought a different application to committee that also had moving the 30-mile-an-hour signs as well. So on these two bases, these two cases, the highways have requested that, and with this one they've requested a new weight limit as well to Wilsford Lane to prevent overly large HGV movements on it. It's just each case on its own merits, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Chris. I don't know which officer, whether it's Shelley, Naomi or Martha, but would you make a note to remind me, please, to contact LCC Highways and invite them to one of our meetings?
Certainly, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. So the next...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome, Mike. A question from another member, please, and it is questions, please. Please be as brief as you can. Next member, please, Shelley.
Councillor Harish Bisnassing.
Harish, is yours the same point as Mike's made?
Not really, Mr. Chairman, but I very welcome what the point Mike raised. I was going to tag that in, but I'm going to remove it this time. But my question to Chris is, I'm very pleased to see that on the section 4.1, that policy considerations, you have got policy SB1, sustainable building, been put in here, and yet there's no clear definition within the text. I can find that those building anything that has been put in for what sort of building we can see on this application for 96 dwelling. Things like what we would like to see the renewable energy use on the sites. We got electric car charging points, carbon saving, carbon footprints, the types of heating elements in there, and also that in a way, how do we promote the low carbon travel? As Dilks already raised with regards to the cycle lanes and proper pedestrian footpaths, but within the sites itself, I think all around should have some form of walkways or cycle lanes in there. The next thing is with regards to this 106 agreement, I see ample provision has been made for 96 houses for education, primary, secondary and sixth form, whereas a development like in St. Martin's, only a provision that is made is for sixth form, a paltry £93,000. And yet we have got great problems in Stamford with secondary educations, where 61%...
Sorry, I'm going to stop you there, Harish, because we're talking about this application with respect, not the one in Stamford, and you can't, as Chris said, it's horses for courses, each on its merits, and there's no comparison between the two, or no affinity between the two. So if we can keep our minds concentrated on this application, please, that would be helpful.
If you will allow me to just continue, Mr. Chairman, I would just point out the anomalies that exist within here, especially in Stamford, where education is provided. You've got 61% of our students, goes to Casterton School, which is in Rutland, and yet County Council is quite happy to pay for the secondary education to Rutland County Council, and yet here our own, not Quillen, but Welland Academy is starved of children, to have proper development, and is getting below standard reports from Ofsted. So we need to bear these things in mind when we are building more houses, 192 houses, and with very little provision for education, primary and secondary.
Okay, Harish. I think your points are very well made, but it's a conversation again that is needed with county through the county education officers and ourselves. But I think the points are well made, and I think Phil raised the query of this business of allocated sites and outline planning applications, etc. But I think one of the benefits, it is a benefit of an outline one, is we can make the points that we want to make to officers that we want to see coming back in reserved matters, which I hope is helpful to them and helpful to whoever comes forward to develop this site. So I'm quite happy to keep going with them, but because I think it is important that officers do understand what is in members' minds in terms of how these developments go forward. Chris, I don't know whether you want to specifically say anything in response to the points Harish made.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Bisnausthing. With regards to your first point, Councillor, on sustainability, so I've mentioned, if you turn to paragraph 7.10, titled Sustainability there, effectively it talks about the site is allocated for residential development and located in close proximity to a number of services and facilities, with a co-op, butchers, primary school, village hall and medical practice all located within 1 kilometre from the site, and then with the new footpath and cycleway linking the site to the rest of the village as well. And then secondly, if you turn to condition 4, so that's a pre-commencement conditions for sustainability measures. So that's a relatively standard wording condition, but that's effectively that's where we'd get the details of the sustainability measures on a plot-by-plot basis, or if you like, within the development. So that will come forward either through that condition or through reserved matters. At this point, we're not looking at individual houses, so we can't talk about electric charging points, solar panels, for instance, anything like that. That's not part of this application, but it is secured there through planning condition. And then just very briefly on your point about education, the way County Council work it out is they'll look at the number of spaces that each site will generate at primary, secondary and sixth form, and then they'll look at the local schools to see what availability they have at primary, secondary and sixth form. If the site would tip them over, so effectively if a school's got 5 places available for primary and the site will result in 8 places needed, then there'll be a financial contribution for those additional three spaces, for instance. So that's why they're all on a case-by-case basis. Again, I can't talk for the site in Stamford, I'm afraid. I'm not aware of the education contributions for that one. But for this individual site, they've been worked out on the basis of capacity at the local primary school in Ancaster, and then the secondary and sixth form schools in Sleaford.
Thank you, Chris. Shelley, any further questions to the case officer, please?
Councillor Penny Milnes.
Councillor Milnes. Penny, please.
Yes, thank you, Chris. I wonder if you could explain to us, and for the benefit of any public listening, exactly what an outline commits us to, as the indicative plan has been rejected, and presumably we can't therefore consider it. We have been caught out, haven't we, in the past when reserved matters come in on various issues, including net densities and various numbers. And can we, at this stage, sit back and add some key issues that we would like to see included in reserved matters? Because we're all very now wary, aren't we, of it? So can you just explain all that to us, please, Chris, at this stage?
Do you want to answer that in principle, Chris? I mean, presumably, Penny, you've got specific items that you might wish to refer to. I don't know.
Well, I'm just thinking, we don't really say much about the reserved matters, do we? Except layout, scale, appearance and landscaping, which is quite vague. And there are certain issues we'd like including. Connectivity is one, and cycleways and how you get around the site, the extra landscaping in specific areas, how we look at overlooking onto existing properties, which is, I think, an issue. None of that is actually identified at this stage as an outline permission access only. And I'm just saying, you know, we seem to have been caught out on these things before, and I'd like to know what we can add in at this stage, or whether we are, you know,
hands tied. Yeah. Okay, Chris.
Tied when it comes to reserved matters.
Yeah. Okay, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Milnes. So first of all, the outline application, all we're asking you to approve is up to 96 dwellings, so that's not 97 dwellings, and it could be less than 96 dwellings. It's up to 96 dwellings within the red line plan. So as the red line plan is key, and up to 96 dwellings. In addition to that as well, the only other part of this application to be approved is the proposed access. So that's the 5.5 metre access shown with the 2 metre pavements either side, and in the location shown on both the red line plan and the indicative layout plan. So if you turn, I think it's to condition 2, or it might be condition 3 rather, that includes the approved plans is the site location plan only, so that's the red line plan, and then access details only as shown on the indicative layout plan. So that's all that we're asking members to approve at this stage as part of the outline application. In terms of going forward with the reserved matters, like you mentioned, Councillor Milnes, it's the there's the 4 points there mentioned in condition 2 that we want to see come forward as part of the reserved matters. Some of the things you mentioned we can't consider at this stage. So, for instance, any impact on neighbouring dwellings, that can only be considered at reserved matters stage. We can't set limits. For instance, like I said, already to Hillside, they already have long gardens to that boundary, so there's going to be sufficient distances anyway. And some of the dwellings on Mercy Drive, Saxon Way are side on, so therefore, again, there wouldn't be too many issues in terms of overbearing or overlooking impact on most of the dwellings on that boundary, but that would come forward at reserved matters. In terms of the landscaping, so landscaping is a consideration of the reserved matters. It's one of those 4 points mentioned, and further to that, we've got further strength on landscaping because that's one of the criteria of the policy. So the policy LVH1 includes landscape screening to the southern edge will be required so as to reduce the impact on views to the site from the open countryside. And as part of this indicative layout plan, they've shown a whole new sort of hedge and tree boundary of, I think it's 10 metre wide buffer all the way along that southeastern boundary within the site. So again, we consider that further reserved matter stage. We haven't got any planting plans, for instance, as part of this outline, but we'd be happy that all of that can be considered suitably at reserved matter stage. Committee would have the control over that when that would come back to committee at some point in the future.
Thank you, Chris. Shelley, any further questions to the case officer, please?
Councillor Charmaine Morgan is requesting a follow-up question, Chairman.
Is there anybody else prior to Charmaine that wishes to ask a question?
No further questions, only requests to speak in debate.
Thank you. Charmaine, very briefly, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I asked earlier regarding the Links Farm Rescue, and the point about the highway access was picked up, but I was actually also made the important point about access to water for the hydrants being, because if that's put in at development stage, then in effect the developer pays. If not, we pay subsequently and double the amount per hydrant.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that that point is raised at the very early stage with this application, should it progress.
Thank you, Charmaine. Chris?
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Yes, the point's noted. I've just had a quick look on my site layout plan, and admittedly there's no sort of water courses in that close proximity to the site. There is a water course slightly to the northwest of the site to access further water. In terms of hydrants, again, we'll pick that up at reserved matter stage with the fire authority.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So if there's no further members wishing to ask Chris any further questions, we can move on to debate. Shelley, who's the first indicator for debate?
Councillor Rosemary Cabery-Brown.
Councillor Rosemary Cabery-Brown. Rosemary, please. Rosemary, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I just had to get myself unmuted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have got quite a number of things to say, really, but I would like to take up Councillor Milnes' point on the fact that we can so easily be hoodwinked on this business of giving outline planning permission. Is there any way that we can absolutely be certain and I know we can't do it at this stage, that we definitely get our affordable housing allocation on this instance, because we were hoodwinked beautifully by the developer at the other end of Ancaster, which went extremely against the grain because they'd promised so many first-time buyers, and of course they renegaded on it. Now, we have got to have more houses built for the local people. And the local people I'm talking about are very often youngsters who are wanting to purchase and get on the housing ladder. Ideally, we have quite a few in Ancaster that have already said they wish to stay in the village. Therefore, in my opinion, they should get first choice. Is there any way that we can make sure, and can I ask all my colleagues on the planning committee to ensure that when this does come forward for actual planning, not just outline as it is at the moment, but when it comes through to the planning, will they please stand by this request and we make sure we get our first time buying houses? The other point I'd like to make is, it's a very difficult one, this. All villages do need some new life in them, I'm sure about that. As usual, we will no doubt be let down by Lincolnshire County Council on various points, whether we want crossings or whether we want whatever. They don't usually go along with us, let's put it like that. And I have Mike Exton has my deepest sympathy, because he's struggled and struggled and struggled to get something out of Lincolnshire County Council. I would like to think that when these buildings do go ahead, we are in a position where we can ask the developer to ensure that we do have houses built with the eco-friendly, as we put it, and particularly help with heating water through panels in the roof. Also, could we ask at this stage for the builder stroke developer to remember that we'd like some bungalows in there, and we'd like pavements wide enough, please, to take little mobile scooters, etc. I think I'm more or less saying that I don't know whether I'm really saying everything that people in Ancaster would wish. And Sudbrook, we've got to remember, we're Sudbrook and West Willoughby as well. I've no idea whether they would like this development. I do know the development originally was for 36, and it's gone now up to 96, which is quite a jump, but we've had this before. I do know that originally one planning permission was for the opposite side of the road. That's all I'd like to say, but I would like it to be, well, I know it's going to be minuted, but I'd like members of the planning committee to take on board various points I've made, so that later on, when it comes to passing it per se, we can make sure that this developer, whoever he is, takes all these points on board, and also doesn't try to make the 96 go up to something like, oh dear, it's 120. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've put my point of view, and I hope that's the point of view of the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary, and as ever, very eloquently. I did notice in the chat box, Councillor Robert Reid asked for a point of information. Can I ask what that is before we move on to the next speaker in debate?
Yes, you can, Chairman. What's before us is outline permission, as we all know, and I do appreciate members' concerns, but of course it's subject to the completion of a S106 agreement. This is where, of course, the affordable housing criteria and other criteria will be identified. If I take us back just to previous committee meetings, when this does come back with this identification application, it will of course be in consultation with the chair of planning as well. So the points are made, and I have the greatest confidence that our chairman will bear these in mind within consideration. The other thing is that of course we are talking about this as an identified allocation site with a allocated number, and really that is since it's within this, the criteria is this application is included in as one of the noted sites, then there really isn't any more to be said, or any more that we could do. We are here to see and give our views weighted on this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Robert. My apologies to other contributors. I thought Robert was seeking information, but yeah, okay. Okay, next speaker in debate, please, Shelley.
Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Councillor Morgan. Charmaine, please.
Yeah, thank you. I actually, particularly having listened to Councillor Reid's statement and our officer Chris earlier, feel that we, in some respects, our arms are tied behind our back, has been said really, regarding the numbers of houses that can be built on this site. Therefore, I actually am prepared to propose that we do approve this application. However, I do have some points really for further down the line. I think Councillor Caberry-Brown touched on an important issue, and I think we need to consider the housing mix, because it seems under the indicative plan we're looking at a lot of houses, and maybe we need to be considering the needs of older people in the community as well as younger members of the community. So I think that's something that we should consider. Perhaps some sheltered housing scheme, for example, would be very welcome there. The other thing on Section 106 funding, I've already touched regarding the fire brigade, but the other area that was touched on and I think is extremely valid, and that's the poor bus service to Ancaster. And if there's any way we could, under the Section 106 funding, also seek more money to increase the number of buses, I think that would help everybody in the whole community. And the fact we now have all these additional residents, we could be talking for 96 houses, you could easily be talking 300, maybe more people moving in there, certainly 200 to 300. Let's also use ask for some funding for additional bus services. Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. Again, bus service provision is a county matter. I do know from my involvement there that there are a lot of talks going on with government to try and halt the decline in bus services. The pandemic has not helped in this, but they are in a very, very critical position as far as being able to sustainability of their own organisations. Okay. That's just a comment on my part. Sorry about that. Next speaker in debate, please, Shelley.
Councillor Robert Reid.
Councillor Reid. Robert, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Since this application, of course, is not unusual, but it is perhaps different to those that members usually have come before them, because there is no developer actually identified. So I think what I'd like to endorse and see actually happens with this outline permission is, and I would ask you as chairman to see if you would consider agreeing with me and probably with other members that what we've spoken about in debate to do with the housing mix, to do with the number of affordable houses, I know that this is criteria that would normally come up, but I really feel that and of course there is the landscaping and the hedging and the cycling and the paths and all the other bits and bobs that are there with it, but we actually that these are noted within the granting of permission, and on that basis I would be happy to second Charmaine's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. By noting, we want some record of it on the minutes for future reference. So,
absolutely, Chairman, spot on.
Thank you. So that's a point for Naomi, please. I think you're doing the minutes. Okay. Thank you for that, Charmaine. Robert, next speaker in debate, please, Shelley.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
Councillor Crawford. Helen, please.
Hello, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Robert Reid beat me to it. I was going to happily second Charmaine's motion for proposal.
Thank you very much for that. Next speaker, please, Shelley.
Councillor Harish Bisnow Singh.
Councillor Bisnow Singh. Harish, please. Hopefully with no reference to Stamford.
No, I'll keep it to a minimum, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My point is, I know this is an allocated site, yes, for it, but my main concern, Mr. Chairman, is using good quality agricultural land that to put housing on it, which will be lost forever for agriculture. We have got a growing population, and we've growing needs for growing foods for our people. So if we keep allocating land that's good agricultural land for housing, we are very soon we're going to run out of all our good growing lands for our own foods. Will be forever important, and hence the carbon footprint and all that will be increasing. So I think in future, when we allocate in land, we should take these into considerations about the quality of in our future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Harish. I think Chris has referred to that in his report as to the grading of the land, Harish, and we did ask the questions at the site visit, did we not? Are there any more contributors to the debate, please, Shelley?
Councillor Penny Milnes.
Councillor Milnes, Penny, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm just going to come back to I'm not happy accepting these outline applications on a sporadic issue. You know, really, it's allocated. We should be considering the full application with all the issues really being considered and looked at properly before we give any permissions. We have been caught out before and been told we've lost control on reserve matters. And there's a lot of issues to be incorporated. So unless we can get these issues tightened in there, and I don't think we can in this outlined situation, I really don't understand why we should accept an outline application on an allocated site where we can only consider one issue, and then we get hoist. So that's my view on this, and I know it's difficult, but you know, how else do we keep control? Because we've lost control in the past and been told we've lost it.
Yeah, are there any further contributors to the debate, please, Shelley?
Councillor Dilts has expressed a request, please.
Yeah, Councillor Dilts. Phil, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I don't want to mention Stamford, but the moving of the 30 mile an hour, I do welcome the fact that in this application, highways have said that it will be moved as, you know, that it should be moved before, hopefully, the sites are occupied. So hopefully that's a change in their policy at county highways. I don't know, but we should probably check that one out. I also have sympathy with Councillor Stokes and others on the number of houses, but as I understand it, that was, you know, that's the indicated number in the local plan, is it not? And that's where we are. We are where we are. So I don't know if the site is bigger than was originally envisaged in the local plan allocation, but it is. It doesn't strike me that 96 is overdevelopment, if I can put it that way, having looked at the site. Moving on, I'm happy to support this application, given all the problems that we've got with the fact that it's outline and it's only one matter that we're looking at. but the principle of development is surely established by the local plan in any case. But I'm happy to support providing all these things that have been raised, and I welcome what you say, Chairman Bob, about the fact that it gives us an opportunity to get them recorded, as well as my particular ones are on connectivity. Concerns are on connectivity, that is fully explored, footpaths and cycleways, not just connecting to the village, but within the site. I would want them, the developer, whoever it is going to be, and let's face it, it's not going to be unlikely to be this applicant. It is likely, as happens, that these sites are sold once they've got the outline application. So it will be an entirely different developer that will be, or applicant that we'll be dealing with when it comes back to us. But I do welcome what you say about recording all these points that we've got, and as well as the footpaths and connectivity that I said. And I think there is opportunity, having looked at the site the other day, that for a footpath along the back or the west of this site, along the back of the houses, along that established hedgerow, and I would like that to be looked at. But the main sort of point I wanted to raise at this point was that although this is an outline application, we have of course got an indicative plan, and that indicative plan is not acceptable. It is entirely not acceptable, particularly when we look at our new guidelines, new design guidelines. And it's not acceptable because it is a dead end. The road is just a dead end with lots of cul-de-sacs off. And it's rather like we had the previous meeting, the Lynchfield Road site in Deeping St James. And of course, we were told that was a legacy of what went on before. But this is an opportunity to say to the applicant here that the indicative plan on page, I think it's 124, is not acceptable. And I want, I really urge that we put that in this approval, because I am going to vote for approval, providing we get that in. And the danger is, if we don't put that in, when it comes back to reserve matters, the applicant will say, oh, you look, but you approved the outline with this indicative plan, and it's here, and that's all we want to build. And I just think that's one of the difficulties that, as somebody said, Rosemary said, we get hoist by our own petard, and we do. So that would be my request, Mr. Chairman. And also, I would welcome this, the reserve matters, and I'm making an assumption here that it will go to the design pad before it comes to us for consultation and further work. I do actually thank Chris Brown for, a very comprehensive report on this, with all these matters that have been raised. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I'm conscious of time, and I would like to get this application dealt with before 1 o'clock, but that I don't want to restrict any new speakers. Shelley, are there any new speakers in the debate, please?
Councillor Ian Selby.
Councillor Selby. Ian, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't know about you, Mr. Chairman. I'm missing Councillor Keir Hardy. I don't know where he's gone. But anyway, the previous speaker spoke well.
I understand that, but carry on.
Okay, I just want to make one point, Mr. Chairman. This is another major development in our district. These applications, they're all adding up, Mr. Chairman. And whilst yesterday I welcome the news from the United Lincolnshire Hospital Trust that they're restoring services back to the level they were last year, those services still don't go far enough. And for the community that we're developing here in South Kesteven, along with this application that's in the middle of Lincolnshire, I have to say, we need those A&E services 24/7 for communities such as Ancaster and the rest of the district, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Absolutely right, and there was good news came out of the ULHT board meeting yesterday, which I'm sure I hope you've read, Ian.
Mr. Chairman, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, no, you were. Shelley, are there any further new speakers in the debate, please?
I can't identify any new speakers. We've got further requests from Councillor Rosemary Cabery-Brown, Councillor Milnes and Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Okay, I will remind members that our constitution protocol says one speak only, but I will go, carry on with this, but please be brief if you've already spoken. So the next speaker is, please,
Councillor Rosemary Cabery-Brown.
Councillor Cabery-Brown. Rosemary, please. Are you there, Rosemary?
Councillor Cabery-Brown, I've unmuted you, so you should be able to speak.
Yes, I'm unmuted now. Right, apologies to Shelley for my bad typing. Basically, all I really wanted to say was to my colleague, Councillor Phil Dilks, and also just to be certain I'm right on this, we are not just having 96 houses going forward. On the other side of the road, there was an application, I understand, for 36, and I noticed it's still in bright pink on the plans. So I would have imagined we're going to get the 432. Is that correct, please?
Are you adding 96 to 36, Rosemary?
Yes.
That's 132.
That's what I just said.
Oh, I thought you said 400. I beg your pardon.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, you're at some point in time that is a possibility, Rosemary. Yes.
Oh, I see. Fine. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Rosemary. Next speaker to come back very briefly, please, Shelley.
Chairman, we actually have a new request from Councillor Jackie Smith, who's not spoken before. Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Smith. Jackie, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Going back to trying to make sure that we don't get taken for a ride on expecting things to be done. Where we're looking at something like saying, yes, we want this or we want that or they'll give us that, we'll take this as and look at it later. Is there any way that we could use the 106 to make sure that if people say they will provide us with this, that they do provide us with this?
Well, if it's in the 106, Jackie, the answer to that is yes, they will have to provide it. Are you thinking of anything specific that isn't already mentioned as conditions for a 106?
Well, no, I was just thinking that when somebody comes along and as Rosemary's outlined, that it's not legally proof. Is there any way we can use the 106 to make sure that it is legally binding?
Sorry, 106 is legally binding, Jackie.
Yes.
So what we put into it is legally binding.
Yeah, but can we make more use of the 106 than we have been doing in the past?
Chris, do you want to respond to that? Oh, sorry, Jeff Upton has come in on that one. Jeff, would you want to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm just trying to get my video to work. Yes. Yeah, I think we've got set out in the report the relevant contributions that has resulted from consultation on the application. So we have those as listed out in the report. Let me just find that appropriate spot. So we do have contributions at the moment across education, health, affordable housing, which is obviously a topic that was raised earlier, highways, which is another topic that has been raised, the informal and natural green spaces, and the parish council community facilities improvement. So those are provisions that are set out in the report today as heads of terms on the Section 106 agreement. I think, as was referred to earlier, it's fair to look at issues of concern that that members have raised and have those for the minutes. And then I think as also referred to by Councillor Dilks, in terms of design issues, we will clearly liaise with our own designer in terms of taking the reserve matters submissions forward and picking up on some of the points that have been raised where they're design issues that have been raised by the committee today, Chairman. So hopefully that gives you some comfort that, you know, there is a level of input both at the moment in terms of what we're requiring in terms of contributions, the reserve matters to come forward in terms of layout and etc. And that we'll minute the concerns that have been raised today so we can pick those up in discussions with whoever comes forward with the reserve matters submissions. Hopefully that provides some clarity, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jeff.
Yes, thanks very much.
Thank you, Jackie. Shelley, any further new contributors to debate, or can we call on? I think there are two that you indicated to me, so we'll take those two. Yes, oh, Phil, do you want to clarify a point first, please? Sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It was just to say thank you to Head of Planning. All the points will be minuted, and I'm happy to accept that. Yep. My point was, I didn't use the term. I just think that, you know, we should, and can it be minuted that the indicative plan is not acceptable on terms of its road layout. That we do not, you know, would be unlikely to accept a dead end, and that we would want a loop road to be seriously considered.
Thank you for that, Phil. Sorry, I thought that's introducing new. I thought you just wanted clarification on what somebody had said. Can we go back to Shelley, please, to the next speaker? I think
Penny Mills, Councillor Penny Mills.
Can we be brief, please, Penny? And I'll say the same thing to Charmaine, I think, who's asked to come back.
Yes, thank you. I'll try and be very brief. I'm going to repeat my point. The indicative plan, as we've found, is not acceptable. And even where we've had an indicative plan that was acceptable at the outline stage, we still got hoist by something completely different, and I think we all know which site I'm talking about, because we'd given it an outline permission on access only. Now, I'm not happy about this. I think we do get hoist, and the allocation actually establishes the principle. So why can't we move straight to a full application, including access and everything else that we're bothered about? And I am really unhappy. I don't think that even when we've minuted our concerns, that because somehow I don't quite understand what it is, when we give an outline permission, we seem to be hoist on these reserve matters. So I'd just like to say that, and I am either going to say we should defer this with this consideration, we should defer it to get an indicative plan, or I seriously believe we should go back to the drawing board and have a full application submitted. And I'm not happy to support an outline application at this stage.
Thank you, Penny. I think Shelley, next member to come back, please.
Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Very briefly, please, Charmaine.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, what I'd like to suggest, which I think may help put some concerns at rest, is that all, emphasised in capital letters underlined, all of the reserve matters come back to the committee.
They do anyway, Charmaine.
Well, sometimes we get reports where actually the things like landscaping, etc., are left to later on.
That's all dealt with now, Charmaine. Sorry, I'm not wishing to be rude, but we deal with all that at design pad stage.
Okay, thank you, but hopefully then that will answer some of the concerns that have been raised. Just secondly, as a point of information, beware what ULHT say. Obviously, having been involved.
That's not the debate. That's not part of this debate, no, Charmaine. I'm not.
Well, I was going to say,
Charmaine, it's not applicable to this application.
Well, comments were made that were accepted, and you joined and supported them. They are not providing all the services back, which is relevant.
Okay.
It's actually those affecting the elderly most affected.
Charmaine, I'm asking you to stop there, please, because it's not part of this application. I do understand what you're saying, as I did with Ian, but it is not part of subject to the debate in this application.
I do have a question, and it goes back to Section 106 funding.
Right, I'll go with that.
Thank you. And it is around health services, but not actually the hospital. When we look at our available resources for health, and that we are asked for a certain amount of money per person for that, does that include GP services and dentistry?
I think, Charmaine, it's for the health service to come to us asking for money, not for us to go to them. So I don't know. I'll ask Chris to answer it, but that is the way, as I understand it. They are aware of the applications, and they do ask that, and it's for them to say they would like this contribution to their services. But Chris, could you enlarge on that a bit, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I'll just turn my camera back on for you. Okay. So, Councillor, in response to Councillor Morgan's point about the NHS CCG contribution, so further detail of that is set out in additional items paper, but I'm happy to read it out as well for clarification. So it says, clarification received from NHS CCG that the requested funding is to contribute to provide more efficient practice space for Caythorpe and Ancaster surgeries, administration, dispensing functions. As a practice, they are at capacity. All the clinical rooms are in use every day, often with multiple health professionals having to use the same room, and I've had to implement a rota for rooms. Ancaster and Caythorpe are one of Lincolnshire's busiest training practices and current practices, and currently have 5 GP trainees. The ability to enhance admin space will allow them to therefore convert more space into clinical use, which facilitates our ongoing training of GP trainees and medical students. So effectively, they're setting out there that their contributions that they've asked for, I think it's around £63,000. Well, that's what it will go towards. Effectively, that's what they've requested. So as the chairman pointed out, it's for them to come to us and say what they need that money for, and in this case, that's what they've specified that they want their money to be spent on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Charmaine. I'm going to draw this to a close, otherwise we're in danger of going around in circles. I'll come back. I saw your point you put in the chat box, Penny. I'll come back to that in a minute. Shelley, are there any further speakers in the debate, please?
No, there aren't any, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to wind the debate up. Just going back to the point that's been referred to 2 or 3 times, and I will ask Chris to comment in a second. If we leave, as Penny suggests, we refuse it until we've got more detail, I think I'm right in saying, Chris, that the applicant could then come forward with just a red line with nothing indicated on it at all, and we would not be in a position to refuse that. Where I see us going forward on these, and it is only the only good point I can see out of this site allocation versus principle of development, is the feedback that we can have as a result of discussing these at this planning committee and taking them back with the officers to the design pad. And I know there is a difference of opinion, not between myself and Robert, but of the way Kratos put the design pad situation forward, which I totally disagree with. And I think we need to be making more use of the design pad to incorporate these things, these issues that come up when we discuss these things openly and in public on outline planning concerns. But I would rather not see outline planning once we've allocated a site, but I think legislation would debar us from doing that, Chris, wouldn't they? But I can assure you they will go back to design pad. Phil sits on that with myself or other substitute members, etc. So we do have that opportunity to ensure members' views are got across. Chris, do you want to clarify, or add anything to that?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just to add that it is an outline application on an allocated site. I would say that scenario is fairly unusual. So by being a site allocation, the principle of development is established. But that's the choice of the applicant. That's not the choice of the council into how they move forward with their applications. In this case, it was the applicant's choice to submit an outline application. They will then look to sign the Section 106 and get that agreed, and then move forward, I imagine, to selling the site to a developer, and then they would do a reserved matters application or come back to us. That was their choice. They could have come forward with a full application had they got a developer or someone on board that would be looking to build out the site. In this case, they haven't, but like I said, that's their choice. Unfortunately, we can't refuse an outline application, I'm afraid. There's no reason to refuse an outline application on a site that's already allocated. Effectively, all that we're asking committee to approve is the principle of development, and in this case, the access as well. In this case, because it's a site allocation, the principle is already established, so we can't refuse it on principle grounds. And the access, counter-council highways have no issues with the access, subject to the further access amendments and off-site highway works that are set out to be secured through condition, partly and partly through the Section 106. I'm sure Martha, from a legal point of view, will be able to put this far more eloquently than I can, but from my point of view, the outline applications are part of planning legislation, I'm afraid. It's the applicant's choice to submit the outline application to us. We can only assess what's put in front of us. We can't go back and reject an application because we'd like a full application, unfortunately. Martha, do you want to add comment to that?
No, I couldn't have put it any more eloquently. Thank you.
Marvellous. But I do think certainly all the points have been registered with me, and I look forward to reading the minutes, and I'll read those with great care. But I do think, and I'm looking across at Robert here, that there is good cause for Jeff, Robert, myself, and the principal planning office, senior principal planning officers to get together. Chris has acknowledged the point about sites allocated. They've already been, the principle of development is already established, but I do think we need to talk about how we can meet the concerns being expressed by members of this committee today and on other occasions as well. So
okay, so just to respond to that, Chairman, we can look between us at policy and changing policy, but we are in no position to change this outline application that is here before us, and that is why I proposed it. Thank you.
I accept that entirely, Robert. I was looking at going forward with the review of the local plan and all the rest of it. So on that note, Naomi, can we move to the vote, please? So we are looking to so there's no doubt that the application is approved conditionally and subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement. So a vote for is for that recommendation. Naomi, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I please confirm, I think it was Councillor Charmaine Morgan that proposed and Councillor Robert Reid that seconded. Is that
That's correct?
Thank you.
Absolutely right, yes.
And just to quickly respond to, there's a comment in the chat box from Councillor Bisnell saying he's happy for approval inclusive of amendments, but just to confirm that what you will be voting on is, as the Chairman's just read out, we've not amended the wording of the proposed acceptance of the application that the planning officer put forward. Okay.
Thank you, Naomi.
Councillor David Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Harish Bisnell.
For.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Mrs Rosemary Cabry Brown.
For.
Councillor Penny Milnes.
Abstain.
Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
For.
Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Ian Selby.
For.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
For.
Councillor Mrs Judy Smith.
For.
And Councillor Bob Adams.
For.
So that recommendation is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. I'm now going to move that we have a lunch break till 1:30, return at 1:30. Shelley, you have been sending me one or two notes. I think I'd be very grateful if you'd give me a call on my mobile, and we can talk through the notes that you've been sending me. Okay.
Certainly, Chairman. Chairman, if I could also note that we have actually reached the 3-hour mark, so if members were minded to continue after the break.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody will make that proposition when we come back at 1:30.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll now go to a half-hour break, roughly, but back at 1:30, please.
Okay. If I knock this thing off.